Hello, everyone. Welcome to this video that will not only teach you history, but also help you improve your English skills. Today, we're diving into the life of one of the most remarkable figures in American history, Abraham Lincoln. Did you know that Abraham Lincoln, the man who led the United States through its greatest crisis, was born in a tiny log cabin with almost no formal education? How did this boy, raised in poverty, rise to become one of the most respected and influential presidents of all time? Lincoln's story is one of resilience, determination, and leadership. From his early struggles to his tragic assassination, his life is filled with lessons that still inspire people today. But beyond the myths and the famous speeches, who was the real Abraham Lincoln? What personal challenges did he face? And how did his decisions shape the future of the United States? In this video, we'll explore Lincoln's journey in 8 powerful chapters, covering his rise from humble beginnings, his leadership during the Civil War, and the legacy he left behind. So, stay with us until the end. You won't want to miss a single detail of this extraordinary life. And before we dive in, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you never miss our latest historical deep dives. Let's begin. Abraham Lincoln was born on February 12, 1809, in a small, one-room log cabin in Hardin County, Kentucky, now LaRue County. His family was poor, and life was tough on the American frontier. His father, Thomas Lincoln, was a hard-working farmer and carpenter, while his mother, Nancy Hanks Lincoln, played a crucial role in shaping young Abraham's character. The Lincolns were not wealthy, and they moved frequently in search of better opportunities. When Abraham was just 7 years old, his family moved to Indiana, where they faced harsh winters, diseases, and endless struggles to survive. Then, in 1818, tragedy struck. His mother died of milk sickness, a common disease caused by drinking contaminated milk. Lincoln was only 9 years old when he experienced this devastating loss. His father remarried a kind and supportive woman, Sarah Bush Johnston, who encouraged Lincoln's curiosity and love for learning. Unlike many children at the time, Lincoln had very little access to formal education. He attended school for less than a year in total. However, he was determined to educate himself. He borrowed books whenever he could, reading everything from the Bible to Shakespeare, and even law books. But life on the frontier was demanding. As a boy, Lincoln spent long hours doing physical labor, helping his father clear land, chop wood, and build fences. His rough upbringing taught him discipline, resilience, and the value of hard work, qualities that would define his leadership in the years to come. By the time he was a teenager, Lincoln had developed a strong sense of independence and ambition. Despite his circumstances, he refused to let his humble background limit him. He started dreaming of something bigger, a life beyond the farm, a life where he could make a difference. This desire to rise above his situation led him to his early career in law and politics, which we will explore in the next chapter. Stay with us, because Lincoln's journey is only getting started. Lincoln's thirst for knowledge was unstoppable. Despite having less than a year of formal schooling, he became a voracious reader, teaching himself everything from math to literature and law. Books became his greatest allies, and he would walk miles just to borrow a new one. Among his favorites were the Bible, Aesop's fables, and Shakespeare, all of which shaped his way of thinking and speaking. But reading alone wasn't enough. Lincoln needed to earn a living. In his early 20s, he left home and settled in New Salem, Illinois, where he tried several jobs, including store clerk, postmaster, and surveyor. However, what truly made him stand out was his storytelling ability and natural leadership skills. His reputation grew, and people began to recognize him as a man of integrity and intelligence. It was during this time that Lincoln discovered his passion for law and politics. In 1832, at the age of 23, he made his first attempt at running for public office, campaigning for a seat in the Illinois state legislature. He lost, but he didn't give up. To build credibility, Lincoln taught himself law, studying legal books late into the night. By 1836, he passed the bar exam and became a licensed attorney. Soon after, he moved to Springfield, Illinois, and established a successful law practice. He quickly earned a reputation for being an honest and skilled lawyer, which led to his famous nickname, Honest Abe. His legal career opened the doors to politics once again. In 1834, Lincoln won a seat in the Illinois state legislature, marking the beginning of his remarkable political journey. Over the next few years, he refined his skills as a debater and became known for his opposition to slavery, a belief that would later define his presidency. Lincoln's ability to connect with people, his intelligence, and his unshakable work ethic set him apart from other politicians. He wasn't just another lawyer or statesman, he was a self-made man who represented the true American dream. But his biggest political challenge was yet to come, the road to the presidency. How did a small-town lawyer rise to become the 16th President of the United States? That's what we'll explore in the next chapter. By the 1850s, the United States was deeply divided over slavery. The northern states were pushing for its abolition, while the southern states wanted to expand it. This growing tension would soon erupt into one of the most significant conflicts in American history, the Civil War. But before that, one man would rise to lead the country through its darkest hour, Abraham Lincoln. Lincoln's political career took a major leap forward in 1854 when Congress passed the Kansas-Nebraska Act, which allowed new territories to decide whether to allow slavery. This infuriated Lincoln, who believed slavery should not spread further. He re-entered politics with renewed determination, becoming a leading voice in the fight against slavery's expansion. His most famous political moment before the presidency came in 1858, during his Senate race against Stephen A. Douglas. The two engaged in a series of legendary debates known as the Lincoln-Douglas debates. These debates focused on slavery and its role in America's future, and Lincoln's arguments against slavery made him a national figure, even though he lost the Senate race. But Lincoln's eloquence, honesty, and firm stance on slavery caught the attention of the newly formed Republican Party. In 1860, the party nominated him as their candidate for the presidential election. His platform was simple: stop the spread of slavery, preserve the Union, and protect democracy. The election of 1860 was one of the most divisive in American history. Southern states saw Lincoln as a direct threat to their way of life. But despite the political chaos, Lincoln won the presidency on November 6, 1860, becoming the 16th President of the United States. His victory, however, did not come without consequences. Before Lincoln even took office, 7 Southern states seceded from the Union, fearing that he would abolish slavery. By the time he was inaugurated on March 4, 1861, the country was on the brink of war. Lincoln had achieved his dream, but he was about to face the greatest challenge any American president had ever encountered, a war that would determine the fate of the United States. By the time Abraham Lincoln took office in March 1861, the United States was already falling apart. Just a month later, on April 12, 1861, Confederate forces attacked Fort Sumter in South Carolina, officially beginning the American Civil War. The war was unlike anything the country had ever seen before. The Union North, led by Lincoln, was fighting to preserve the nation, while the Confederacy South, made up of 11 seceded states, was fighting for its independence and the continuation of slavery. Lincoln had one primary goal: keep the United States together at any cost. Lincoln faced enormous pressure from all sides. Many in the North doubted his abilities, and his own government was divided. He struggled to find strong military leadership, going through several generals before finally placing his trust in Ulysses S. Grant. Meanwhile, the war was taking a devastating toll. Thousands of soldiers were dying in brutal battles like Antietam, Gettysburg, and Shiloh. The conflict seemed endless, and public support for Lincoln was fading fast. Many people wanted the war to end, even if it meant letting the South secede. But Lincoln refused to back down. He stood firm, knowing that the survival of democracy itself was at stake. His ability to stay calm under pressure and make difficult decisions would define his legacy. Initially, Lincoln's main goal was simply to preserve the Union, not necessarily to abolish slavery. But as the war continued, he realized that ending slavery was the only way to truly save the nation. On January 1, 1863, Lincoln issued one of the most historic documents in American history, the Emancipation Proclamation. This executive order declared that all slaves in Confederate-held territories were free, transforming the war into a moral battle for human freedom. Although the Emancipation Proclamation did not immediately free all enslaved people, it changed the course of the war. It prevented foreign nations like Britain and France from supporting the Confederacy, and encouraged thousands of black men to join the Union Army. One of Lincoln's most powerful moments as a leader came on November 19, 1863, at the dedication of the Gettysburg National Cemetery. The Battle of Gettysburg had been one of the bloodiest battles of the war, with over 50,000 casualties. Standing on that battlefield, Lincoln delivered a short, but unforgettable speech, the Gettysburg Address. In just 272 words, he reminded the nation that the war was not just about territory, but about freedom, equality, and democracy. He famously declared, "Government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth." These words continue to inspire generations of Americans. By 1864, the war was still raging, but Lincoln's strategic leadership was beginning to turn the tide. With General Ulysses S. Grant leading the Union Army, the North started winning major victories. Lincoln also faced re-election that year, and many doubted he would win. But thanks to key Union victories and his commitment to ending slavery, Lincoln secured a second term as president. However, the war was far from over. The Confederacy refused to surrender, and Lincoln knew he had to stay strong until the very end. By 1862, the Civil War had already taken a devastating toll, but Lincoln knew that the conflict was about more than just preserving the Union, it was about the very soul of the nation. For too long, the United States had been divided by slavery, and Lincoln understood that ending it would change the course of history forever. In the early years of the war, Lincoln had been careful about making slavery the main issue of the conflict. He feared that if he moved too quickly, border states like Kentucky and Missouri might join the Confederacy, making the war even harder to win. But after the bloody Battle of Antietam in September 1862, Lincoln saw an opportunity. Just days after the Union's victory at Antietam, Lincoln announced the Emancipation Proclamation, declaring that as of January 1, 1863, all enslaved people in Confederate-held territories would be free. This was a game-changer. The proclamation did not free all enslaved people immediately, since it only applied to the rebellious states, but it shifted the war's focus. It was no longer just about the Union, it was a fight for human freedom. The Emancipation Proclamation had several major effects. Moral and political shift. The war became a battle against slavery, not just a military conflict. This made it impossible for Britain and France, both anti-slavery nations, to support the Confederacy. Encouraged black troops to join the Union Army. After the proclamation, nearly 200,000 black men joined the Union Army, bringing fresh strength to the fight. Weakened the Confederacy. Many enslaved people in the South saw the Union as their path to freedom and began escaping plantations, depriving the South of its labor force. Although it was a massive step forward, Lincoln knew that the Emancipation Proclamation was not enough. Since it was an executive order, it could be overturned after the war. If slavery was to be abolished forever, it had to be written into the U.S. Constitution. Lincoln's final and greatest battle against slavery was the passage of the 13th Amendment, which would permanently abolish slavery in the United States. He worked tirelessly to convince Congress to pass the amendment, using his political skills to secure crucial votes. Finally, on January 31, 1865, the 13th Amendment was passed, ensuring that slavery would be banned forever in the United States. When the final vote was counted, cheers erupted in Congress, and Lincoln's dream of a free nation had become reality. After the amendment passed, Lincoln reportedly said, "This is a king's cure for all the evils. It winds the whole thing up." For Lincoln, abolishing slavery was the ultimate victory, one that he believed was necessary to fulfill the true promise of American democracy. But Lincoln's time as president was running out. The Civil War was nearing its end, and he was preparing to reunite the nation. However, he would not live to see the country at peace. Abraham Lincoln was not just a president, he was a leader who reshaped America. His ability to navigate one of the darkest periods in U.S. history and inspire people with his words and actions made him one of the most respected figures of all time. But what exactly made Lincoln such a remarkable leader? Unlike many politicians of his time, Lincoln was known for his humility and connection with ordinary citizens. He never forgot his humble beginnings and always spoke in a way that regular Americans could understand. He frequently visited wounded soldiers, spoke with grieving families, and took time to personally respond to letters from the public. This deep sense of empathy and accessibility made people trust him, even in times of war. Lincoln's leadership wasn't just about strategy, it was also about communication. His ability to deliver powerful speeches and inspire hope in difficult times set him apart from other leaders. One of his greatest strengths was his clarity. He didn't use complicated political language, he spoke plainly and directly, making sure his message reached everyone. This was best demonstrated in the Gettysburg Address, where he used just 272 words to redefine the war's purpose. That this nation, under God, shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. Despite facing immense criticism, Lincoln never wavered in his belief that the Union must be preserved. He had moments of doubt, but he never gave up. Even when the war seemed unwinnable, when thousands of lives were lost on the battlefield, and when people demanded that he negotiate with the Confederacy, he stood firm, because he knew that giving up would mean the failure of democracy itself. His unwavering belief in freedom, unity, and equality guided every decision he made. After winning re-election in 1864, Lincoln prepared for the next phase, reuniting a broken nation. In his second inaugural address, delivered on March 4, 1865, he did not celebrate victory, instead, he called for forgiveness and healing. With malice toward none, with charity for all, with firmness in the right as God gives us to see the right, let us strive on to finish the work we are in, to bind up the nation's wounds. This speech showed that Lincoln did not seek revenge on the South, he only wanted to rebuild the nation as one. Sadly, he would never get the chance to see that happen. On the evening of April 14, 1865, just days after the Civil War had effectively ended, Abraham Lincoln and his wife, Mary Todd Lincoln, went to Ford's Theater in Washington, D.C., to watch a popular play, Our American Cousin. The country was beginning to heal, and Lincoln, exhausted from years of war, sought a rare moment of relaxation. But lurking in the shadows was John Wilkes Booth, a famous actor and Confederate sympathizer, who despised Lincoln and blamed him for the South's defeat. Booth had been planning an assassination for weeks, and saw this as his opportunity to strike. At 10:15 p.m., as the audience erupted in laughter at a joke from the play, Booth entered the presidential box, aimed a .44 caliber Derringer pistol, and fired a single shot into the back of Lincoln's head. The president slumped forward, unconscious, as Mary screamed in horror. Chaos erupted as Booth leapt from the balcony onto the stage, breaking his leg upon landing, but still managing to escape. Before fleeing, he shouted the words, "Sic semper tyrannis," Latin for, "Thus always to tyrants." Lincoln was immediately carried across the street to a boarding house, where doctors worked desperately to save him, but the wound was fatal. Throughout the night, close friends and government officials gathered, knowing the inevitable was near. At 7:22 a.m. on April 15, 1865, Abraham Lincoln took his final breath. As silence filled the room, Secretary of War Edwin Stanton solemnly declared, "Now he belongs to the ages." The assassination sent shockwaves through the nation. Just days before, Americans had been celebrating the end of the Civil War. Now, their leader was gone. Lincoln's funeral train traveled over 1,600 miles, stopping in major cities as thousands mourned the loss of a man who had fought to preserve the Union. Meanwhile, John Wilkes Booth became the most wanted man in America. After 12 days on the run, he was finally cornered in a Virginia barn and shot dead by Union soldiers. His co-conspirators, who had planned to assassinate Vice President Andrew Johnson and Secretary of State William Seward, were captured and later executed. Though Lincoln's life was cut short, his vision for America did not die with him. His leadership, principles, and unwavering commitment to freedom and unity would forever shape the United States. In the final chapter, we'll explore why Lincoln's legacy still matters today, and how his impact continues to influence the world. Stay with us. More than 150 years after his death, Abraham Lincoln remains one of the most influential figures in American history. His leadership during the nation's greatest crisis, his unwavering commitment to freedom and equality, and his ability to unite a divided country have cemented his place as a symbol of democracy and justice. But why does Lincoln's legacy still matter today? Lincoln's vision for a united nation continues to shape America's political and social landscape. His belief in government of the people, by the people, for the people, expressed in the Gettysburg Address, remains a cornerstone of democracy not just in the U.S., but around the world. His leadership during the Civil War set a precedent for how leaders should act in times of national crisis, with resilience, empathy, and a clear moral compass. Perhaps Lincoln's most enduring legacy is his role in the abolition of slavery. The Emancipation Proclamation and the 13th Amendment laid the foundation for the civil rights movements that followed. His vision of equality and justice inspired generations of activists, from Frederick Douglass and Martin Luther King Jr. to modern-day leaders fighting for human rights. Beyond politics, Lincoln's humble origins and relentless self-improvement continued to inspire people from all walks of life. Born into poverty with little formal education, he proved that determination and hard work could lead to greatness. His story embodies the American dream, showing that anyone, regardless of background, can rise to make a difference. Even in today's world, filled with division and uncertainty, Lincoln's leadership offers lessons in patience, unity, and moral courage. He proved that even in the darkest of times, hope and perseverance can bring a nation back together. As we look back on Lincoln's life, one thing becomes clear: he was more than just a president, he was a leader who shaped the course of history. His ideals, his words, and his actions continue to inspire and guide us, reminding us that freedom, equality, and democracy are always worth fighting for. Thank you for watching this deep dive into the life and legacy of Abraham Lincoln. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more historical content. What do you think was Lincoln's greatest achievement? Let us know in the comments below.